Sorry for the delay on this one. If you want to hear the first half of the premiere, the link is in the description over on Analysis Daily. All bottled up at its surface level is a breath of fresh air where the conflict is believable in that Starlight Glimmer for the first time in the show is off floating around on her own. There's no net, Twilight or teacher isn't there to bail her out. If something goes wrong, her safety go-to zone simply is to normally take over, just like we saw in every little thing that she does. Believably, the first step for everyone recovering from poor behavior should be a lapse back. It's regretfully the misstep of making the changelings go from hissing, cackling demon bugs to, well, for the lack of a better term, rainbow fairy bugs that just now make up a background aesthetic. In its own way, it's regretful Luna has only ever felt guilt, but not temptation to become Nightmare Moon again. People do bad things for rewarding reasons, because they make them feel comfortable, they put them at ease. They're a very fine routine. The tricky thing is, every adjective I just gave there is also done for doing things the right way as well. Trixie is the perfect challenge to Starlight from an entertaining standpoint. Whether you believe Trixie's show personality before now supported that she's being keyed into not noticing Starlight's bounding grief or anger, or this is more based on Trixie's fandom betrayal and what people wanted to see, the execution either way is point on. For anyone who's seen Star Wars The Force Awakens on the character that went from 0 to 10 in her Jedi abilities in such a short time of experience feels jarring and unimmersive.
Turn into a pickup. No.
The show sets Trixie up to be piss poor at magic. If you want to point out that she says as much in No Second Prances, that's fine, but we don't need to know that. It's not beat over your head for 22 minutes, or for 10, or for 5. In literally 10 seconds flat, no really good look, you know everything that you need to know about Trixie's magic abilities. It sucks. Starlight corrects the problem, and yeah, it creates an even bigger problem.
Bring it in your mind. Oh, yeah, that could be it. What does your teacup look like? What shape is it? What color?
And wisely, the episode doesn't run Trixie getting carried away with her magic into the ground for the rest of the episode. The problem of the episode isn't that Trixie became some kind of super warlock because of Starlight. We already did that in Magic Duel. I'm sure on some level watching Trixie duel Starlight Glimmer hepped up on black magic would have been badass. You know what? If that's not a fanfiction out there right now, it will be now. When you get around all the magic bottling, the episode doesn't just entertain, it doesn't just have people acting as they should, but the message it gets across is the primary necessary one, not just for the Brony fandom, but for many people who are willing to bottle up their complaints. There are tons of times I've seen or heard Brony say it's fine, when it damn well isn't. This is literally shown step by step. If you have someone with, let's say, a powerful personality, they just aren't going to figure out they're being a dick. Whether you believe Trixie should have been this much of a penis or not, it doesn't just serve this episode's agenda. I suspect, like it or not, when the show staff needs someone to magically drop the ball again, Abbott and Costello here are going to be wheeled out. The only tricky part is to attach some kind of lesson in 22 minutes because of Trixie. Blustering her way around isn't going to lack for entertainment, thankfully. Trixie and Starlight are still going to Laverne and Shirley their way through the episode from now on. And Starlight isn't even really expecting Trixie to change. They're reasonable friends you hang out with. And sometimes they're doofs. The simpletons, the screw-ups.
The Vita.
That makes life worth living. Conversely, as fun as Trixie is, you couldn't hang out with her every day or nothing would ever get done. Reality is perception, and whether you're trying to not piss off your friends in 2 different directions, build a wall, or help people obtain a greater level of understanding, some people might see your progress as someone else's detriment. I do wonder what practical purposes based on Trixie's behavior could you justify in helping her become more powerful in the future. See, the problem is with the magical anger cloud is, why of all the ponies would she be the one to have it manifest? There are also another massive fine point about this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Starlight never confided in Twilight about this. Now, we could interpret that as intentional to give something for the show to come back to. And then there's the fact that Starlight's rage can enslave ponies. There are things in the character beyond her control that can wreck everything around her. One could ask the question, even with Trixie on her side, putting her best foot forward, was that really the best idea? I mean, the answer is obviously yes. I would never throw away someone so useful, and it certainly creates a lot of room for discussion. This draws me back to the question about the Tenebris. What if they hadn't made Luna conscious about that? They could have had a series of horrors floating around in Luna's mind that strained the resources of the kingdom to keep in check. Now you can object and say that, well, this isn't the right show for that, but if you look at Royal Problem, don't act like they haven't gone there. On that note, we're gonna do Royal Problems. There's a gentleman called Fatmanfalling who's got a pony channel, link in the description, lovely man, but I kinda disagree with one itty bitty teeny weeny humdrum, minuscule, microscopic point of contention. The point that this episode forever closes the comic will never be made into show form. Okay, 1. There's nothing worse in the world than that book guy out there who goes to the movies or show when everyone's having a good time, and in the distance you can hear a pocket protector jostling, "Well, in the book." You know what? Let's start over. That came off as needlessly bitchy on my point. To be fair, that comic is amazing. However, that comic is pro-Celestia propaganda. It's basically why Celestia is right. It's Luna's adventures in filling in for Tia. What you don't see is Celestia being challenged. At all. In fact, she just goes to a day at the spa. Now, even if you're pro-Celestia, I had a discussion with Sean Howell about this, where he said that Faust back in the day said Celestia was supposed to be a faultless god, perfect in every way, even though that version never made it to the show. So what you're saying is, the version of Celestia you want is Cadence? Celestia is challenged in this episode, and not only does she do stuff, she's successful. I remember that big moment in season 6 where Celestia fought and lost in the season premiere to, what was it, weather? Thank God her royal subjects were there to bail her out. I think some people don't understand how world-endingly inept Celestia has been outside of the suggestion that Celestia is a good politician, which is confirmed in this episode. Out the gate, this is how you grab attention. Before we even get there, Twilight is having a panic attack. Remember the episodes where Twilight is organizing books or actually bored? Before we even get to the scene, this shit has hit the proverbial fan. And Twilight stays consistently stuck in this mode throughout the episode. This is a big deal, and this character would most certainly think this is a big deal. And Twilight, had she come along in full capacity, would have only been ill-equipped to fix things. Hell, she actively would have probably prevented them because of her respect for Celestia. The fact she snuck along in the first place to peek in on Starlight isn't just established in No Second Prances, but it'd also be Twilight's duty to keep tabs on Starlight. I know I didn't want Twilight to turn into Celestia, and when I'm damn glad, when she's worried, she didn't. She kept in touch with Starlight throughout the ordeal, despite it being against tradition. By the way, that ought to be something we see. What happens when someone who comes along that isn't supposed to be there and botches fixing the problem? It might be a little late at this point. Then again, Twilight sort of broke that rule here a little bit. At least maybe she'll press her luck next time in the next map episode. There's another interesting point here. The map is surrounded by 7 chairs, one of each of the main 6 plus Spike, which might I add would suggest that the map has acknowledged Spike but never called on him. The map just randomly called on Starlight, which basically means we could have a Trixie map episode. There's gonna take some interesting writing to see Trixie fix a problem. I can assume the CMC might get an episode since the only thing that you seem to need is, well, a cutie mark. And, well, be around. You might call this a little on the nose.
Or you know, maybe the royal sisters aren't seeing eye to eye on something. No! That's just crazy. Luna and Celestia would never fight.
But yeah, Twilight would totally be in complete denial. She has way too much respect and hero worship for Celestia to be the one to correct her. To assume she had a problem, I can't stress how many good things you've thrown away with if your response was, "It's not in the comic book." I'm gonna pout, bite my lip. Sorry, I slipped again. There's an interesting point which you'll likely never get the legit answer on.
So the map sent you to solve a friendship problem?
Yes, Princess.
Well, there's nothing wrong here, right, sister?
No. Everything's perfect as usual, sister.
Celestia is a master politician. As tempting as it is to say that Celestia was oblivious to a problem, she might have just chose to omit anything that happened. I'm assuming the tension between Celestia and Luna has been there since day 1 of Luna returning to Canterlot. Now, if you want some analysis, or at least speculation, maybe that's what's been hampering Celestia this whole time, that she had 1,000 years of guilt for sending her sister away, and the only thing that she got back was this icy, aloof relationship with Luna. Ah, the resting bitch face. Take notes, bronies. If this was your waifu, you'd be waking up to this mug after a night of spooning. Oh yeah, drink it in, boys.
Each other. sorry. It's just, you said princesses and aren't the best in the same sentence, and it's making me nervous.
You might be tempted to say this is Twilight flanderized. I mean, besides the fact that Twilight has shown zero ability to really correct or question Celestia, but I want you to think of someone big and up the chain in Brony. What Twilight's doing here is basically what Bronies do, and people in general do every day. We get comfortable not questioning authority, especially if that authority is perceived as safe and comforting. We might even attack someone who has the right idea just because we put others up on such a lofty perch.
What is it?
You two.
Excuse me?
Now, I do think this is a bit much. Sure, Celestia might double down in keeping up appearances. Luna, while in zero fucks mode, just assumes this is alright. I suppose you could argue Luna has a variant of Stockholm Syndrome, where even if she has a complaint, she's so used to not piping in about it, she has an adverse reaction to having someone else point it out. Situations like these are ultra common, but if you have two friends or family members with similar tension, you should strive to find a non-threatening manner to alert them, politely as possible, that you're concerned. That said, you're likely going to get yelled at, so buckle up.
Like smiling is so hard.
I'm sure that's not what Princess Luna meant to say.
Is that what exhausts you? Smiling and being adored by every pony? And you have it so much worse, do you? You spent your evenings flitting around giving ponies lovely dreams. Oh, it sounds just awful.
My god, could you imagine the back and forth what we could have had between these two all this time? We got a big nothing burger between Luna and Celestia in episode 100, where they gave each other a passive-aggressive pout. But this right here is just spite and venom. This is Fluttershy calling Rarity and Pinky useless and putting your hoof down. Except it's back and forth. You want uncomfortable? You have one of these arguments where neither side is about to back down. I kept waiting for a fight to break out or someone to throw a punch.
You'll know exactly what it's like to beat each other.
Sometimes you're gonna have to jam your foot in the door. You're not always gonna be right. You're not always gonna be welcome. And it's not always gonna turn out well. Even with the nicest and politest of tacks, situations like these, ones where two people want to take the other person's head off, when confronted with a problem that's been bubbling below the surface, sometimes there really is no right answer. I'd love to give some of those examples, but that really is for a different show. In most cases, people aren't willing to walk a mile in someone else's shoes, and regretfully, there isn't a magical spell to make them. You can try and manipulate, bribe, or bully, but people are super fucking comfortable being them, knowing their perspective, and it's a lot easier to paint the narrative that everyone else is wrong, evil, or dare I say, a Nazi. If you're one of those people, I want you to know you're being dumber than Celestia or Luna were in this episode. They, at the least, learned from their problem. You can't really rely on others for your enlightenment. You really can't wait for a Starlight to wake you up in most cases. You have to do it for you.
Where's Luna?
She already turned in for the night.
Did she now? It seems my duties were harder than my sister expected.
This is so deliciously bitchy. Imagine if Twilight was more uppity with Celestia. We could have had this back in season 4 between Tia and Twilight. Imagine Celestia as the princess of friendship for a day. If this was Cadence, I guess Tia could be banging shining armor for 22 minutes. Sir. Sorry, that was uncalled for.
Moon raised. It's even easier than raising the sun.
You do understand you're not helping yourself. Now granted, I want to concede that Fatmanfalling's point about Celestia had to do this for about 1,000 years already, but it's highly likely that Celestia didn't dreamwalk in Luna's absence. While covering the night, she just focused on raising the moon, which would explain why she doesn't appreciate Luna's duties.
Don't worry, Starlight. I know how to handle Nightmare Moon.
Oh goody, I was wondering if Twilight was going to make it into this episode, but no, seriously, you think Celestia would have freaked out a bit more. Also, those thunderbolts in her eyes, I understand this is just a dream, but remember my point that we could have had untold horrors floating around from Luna's mind? No, they still managed to pull that off via Starlight's. Who else would know magic's full destructive power and be able to imagine all this crazy shit? I mean, crap, Starlight was a villain. Who else better than to imagine a fallen Celestia?
Who do needs balance when you can have it all?
You'd be surprised how many people in this fandom have mulled over that question.
I don't...
This is fucking horrifying. The teeth falling out dream. Oh goddamn. The only way this could have been worse is if this happened to Pinky.
And you will never exist again!
You can suggest this is me looking too deep. She only made this remark to Daybreaker. It could be the writers foreshadowing we're getting Nightmare Moon back. If it goes without saying, a royal problem is literally as good as it gets. It's a balance of new and old. It proves the show can be a bit more bold and actiony if it tried, and still be in-depth and teach. It's everything. Except it's not the comic. Thank you, fuck you, boy.